Welcome back, everyone, to the MJ SportsCast. My name is Mike Tang. I am joined every week by my host and producer, Jerry Yang. How you doing today?
Been good, man. Coming off of the NCAA championship game, Kansas with the win, huh? I thought that was one of the better or one of the best games I saw. I think in NCAA championship history, mainly because you had an underdog team that just beat Duke, right? So UNC just beat Duke, and then now you're facing Kansas. Kansas was the one of the top seeds to be able to win the championship a couple years ago, but then COVID hit, and it just seems like it was right that Kansas won out in the end. And made the comeback and became the rightful champion. What did you think of that game?
Yeah, I thought it was one of the better national championship games that we've seen in recent history here. But the one thing that I've noticed about this year's tournament is the lack of real NBA superstars on all the rosters here. You didn't really have a whole lot of guys who were stepping up and taking over games, right? And that's kind of what happened in the Final Four as well, right? Especially in the Duke game, especially in the
Yeah.
national championship game. UNC, they came out on top in the first half, but they couldn't really sustain that lead going into, the last 6 or 7 minutes. It just seemed like they really ran out of gas
That's
there.
what I
And
thought too. Yeah.
yeah, and I thought Kansas, they really developed a great second half plan of just basically pushing the ball,
Mhm.
running the fast break really well here, and not allowing UNC's big guys to score much in the
Mhm.
second half. They made a lot of their guards, shoot a lot of tough shots in the perimeter there, and they just played spectacular defense in that second half there. I think they went like on some like 30-10 run or something like that, and I thought it was just a really well played game by Kansas in the second half. But one player, their name is such a great name, Remy Martin. For a guy,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, I love that name for a basketball player. There, and he hit some really big shots in that last
Uh-huh.
7 minutes. So,
Yeah,
really
totally.
good shout out to the Kansas program for winning it all.
Yeah, and I'll give a shout out to the UNC head coach as well. I think it's his first year, right? Like Herbert Davis, I think is his name. So, kind of impressive for your first year to be able to take a team to the championship and beating one of your biggest rivals, Duke, right? And it was kind of special that we finally saw UNC and Duke in the tournament. I think those two have always been kind of top teams in that area and the rivalry there. So I know a lot of people that went to those schools or live in that area. That was pretty important to them. So that was kind of cool to see.
Yeah, and then another eye-opening stat that I found today was, since 2001, every national championship since then has had four top 100 players in their roster.
Wow.
Um, this year was not the case. Kansas only had
Mhm.
two of those guys here, um,
Interesting.
and that may just be evident, towards maybe the talent, out there in this field. But I thought Kansas played really well. McCormick, his game, especially inside, scoring the last two baskets for Kansas was really big
Mhm.
here. And I've wondered like how his game will translate to the NBA because we've seen a lot of these big guys, they kind of try to dominate in college, but then when they go to the NBA, they have a really tough time transitioning to that
Right.
level. Did you see any type of NBA talent on your end, or what did you think of like, I guess, the gameplay and how some of these players may use that for the NBA?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I saw a lot of talent there. It's really hard to say, right? I mean, a guy I always think about and I talk to you about a lot is Duke's Mason Plumlee back in the day.
Yeah.
Like we always thought he might have been a really good NBA player based on what he did in college with Duke, but I mean, you don't really hear his name these days, you know? So it's hard for me to say really like who I think is going to be, translating to the top level. But one thing I would say is I think it's in the interest of these programs to make it more of a spread out or like a team effort type of play or play style, for them for the program to grow, right? Because I think there's some programs like thinking about like the Stanford program with the Lopez brothers. Once they graduate, your program becomes irrelevant, or you lose a star player, then what happens? You have to start from square one, right? Because you base your whole offense around one or two NBA players or future NBA players. So maybe the lack of talent is also based on how the plays are being drawn and how they're actually coaching these guys, and they're seeing some success and longevity in these programs by not overly emphasizing a superstar, and which is kind of ironic in some ways because I think the NBA is moving towards like more of an all-star or all talent type team, right? Like since the Heat era with LeBron and Dwayne Wade and a few players there where they built up this championship team and had a stacked roster. The NBA seems to since then been creating stacked rosters like how the Warriors did with Durant, So
Yeah.
it's almost like the opposite approach for the NBA because you have the money to spend and be able to um, retain these superstars, you're able to go that direction versus college. It's like a one and done for most of these stars, right? So you don't want to overly um, build a playbook or custom playbooks around those guys. So I thought that was interesting, and maybe that kind of explains why you don't get a lot of stars you're seeing deep in the tournament.
Yeah, and we also have to question why Stanford and Cal, why their men's basketball program hasn't made it to the NCAA field of 64
Yeah.
here. And I think they're kind of in between, between, picking up these high school recruits and just not having enough talent, to compete here. And what Kansas did was really interesting was that they really picked up a lot of transfer students, transfer basketball
Mhm.
players, and made the most, out of their talent. And I think that's something that I think Stanford and Cal, they really have to maybe look into that and not just rely on guys who get 4.0 GPAs and also try to make the basketball team as stars, so.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I've always heard that Kansas was like the deepest bench and deepest roster, right? And there's a lot of truth to that because I think a lot of those guys do translate into the NBA versus like Cal and Stanford. You only see a handful of guys that actually move on from the college level to the pros from those programs. So I think it makes it a lot harder to recruit. So it'll be interesting to see what they do there, but definitely some things need to change if they want to be relevant. So
Yeah. Let's move on to the NFL here. There hasn't
oh,
really
wait,
been a lot of.
before we do, we have a comment from What's Up G. It says love the G jersey. So probably talking about your jersey.
Most recently, ESPN posted an article about the top City Connect jerseys in Major League Baseball here. And the San Francisco Giants jersey, this one that I'm wearing, is actually ranked number 6 out
Oh,
of out of the whole
nice.
lot here. And they definitely talked about the details of the jersey that makes it a little bit more unique than the ones
Mm,
that we're used to seeing on a regular basis. First is like this Golden Gate Bridge silhouette,
mhm.
on the shoulder. That's pretty cool here, and then it also has like that fog, uh, that kind of
Ah,
fog interface too. That makes it kind of cool. In addition to kind of having like this fog area in the bottom part of the
yeah,
G,
the bottom. Oh,
pretty cool, in my opinion. Did your
yeah.
opinion change about the jersey at all, Jerry? Jerry, I know you've had some reservations when they first showcased it early last year.
No, it's growing on me. I think definitely, it was a lot cooler after seeing more more of the players wear it throughout the season, right? And then if you're comparing it to other teams, it's definitely one of the cooler jerseys. And I think MLB The Show, the video game, actually has all the City Connect jerseys now. So you can play as the Giants in the City Connect jersey on that video game, right? So it shows that the fans really like it. That's why they're incorporating to the video game.
Hey, the Giants, they've been winning with the jerseys, every
True.
Tuesdays. I think they're like 8-1, with these City Connect jerseys here. So as long as they keep on winning, I don't think that the team doesn't mind bringing it out on a weekly basis. But can you imagine if they went like 2-6 with this jersey? I don't think they would bring it back the following season.
No, it'll be done for sure. Oh my goodness.
All right, Niner stuff here. I heard you on John Jay's podcast this week. You did a really good job of kind of talking about some of the 49ers free agents and who they let go and all that. But do you think the 49ers offseason, do you think it's been a success or a non-success so far?
Yeah, I mean, I gave it a kind of like a B minus grade because I thought they did a really good job of signing Travarius Ward, right, to deepen that secondary that needed help. And they also addressed the special teams with like guys like Ray McLeod and a few others. And in the safety position, they signed Greg Odom, right? And that added some more depth as well. So I
Yeah.
think overall, they're actually doing a good job. I thought signing, pieces to help solidify some of the weaknesses throughout the season. And the reason why it's not an A grade, though, is the fact that Jimmy G is not traded, right? I think they kind of bobbled and failed in that department. And I'm not sure what they're going to do with him, to be honest with you. Right? I think there's a chance that we just cut him before the season starts, and maybe that's the best thing to do. And right now they can't cut him because he has to be healthy, right? I think there's some, NFLPA rules where you can't cut a guy that's injured, without
Mm,
incurring like a lot of penalties and dead cap space, and that's why, you know even if the Niners want to cut him and sign someone else, they can't do that right now. And obviously, the trade market has really dried up. We talked about extensively last week, where you have a guy like Baker Mayfield, who's $7 million cheaper, healthier, ready for spring train and OTAs and everything. Then you have Jimmy G, who's not right. Like he's not set to play until probably or be ready until the mandatory mini camp in June. So it's going to be a tough uphill battle for Jimmy G, but I'm feeling like they're waiting for him to get healthy, and at that point, they're going to try to trade him at least in the draft if they can. And if they can't, we're most likely just going to cut bait with them. I don't see him staying with the team. I
yeah.
don't think it's the best interest in them. If he does, he wouldn't even be in the locker room, right? He'll be a guy that's like kind of we hold in case another team has an injured quarterback. So yeah, so I don't know. I give it a B minus grade because of Jimmy G. But overall, I thought we did pretty well free agent wise, and I think getting Kerry Hyder back was a big move. We knew we couldn't re-sign Lincoln Tomlinson, so that's where Adam Banks I think came in handy for us. I'm imagining we're going to draft probably an offensive lineman because this is a pretty deep draft for O linemen, right? And that's why you're seeing a lot of teams across the league not re-sign their veteran offensive line players is because it's such a deep draft. I think in the second round we can probably get a decent right guard or right tackle to kind of back up Daniel Brunskill and McGlinchey. Right, and Mike McGlinchey, I think, is on the chopping block for us because he hasn't really done well, a couple seasons, and he's been injured last year. So
Yeah.
yeah, so I can imagine the Niners kind of addressing that and the safety position as well. Even though they have Greg Odom, I think they still need more depth pieces on that side. Um, so yeah, so overall B minus. I mean, do you agree with that assessment? I know. I don't know how deep you've looked into this, right? But was there any moves that you liked and didn't like there?
Yeah, I think that's a pretty fair assessment here. I would say it's roughly maybe a C plus to me, just because, yeah, we got Charvarius Ward, but it seems like he only had one really good season, which was last season with the Chiefs. And although he's fairly young, he's what, 25 or
Yeah,
so for a corner.
25. Hmm.
He still has his future ahead of him. But when you think of Charvarius Ward, we're not thinking about a shutdown corner. We're thinking about a pretty solid cornerback here. And we paid some pretty big money for him. So I think it's a wait and see. I think losing Tomlinson was a big minus, but like you mentioned, we really couldn't afford him here. So I really think it's going to be up to the draft to see how this offseason will go. And, since we
Yeah.
don't have a first or second round, do we have a second round pick? I don't think we have a second round pick
No, we
this year,
do. We
right?
have a second. We have a second round pick.
Okay.
So
If we have a second round pick, I'm pretty confident the Niners won't screw it up. They only screw up first round picks, right? So,
we have a lot of third round picks too because we lost Mike McDaniels and Robert Sala, right? So I think we actually have a lot of picks in this draft,
yeah.
believe it or not, right? So, and your comment on Travarius Ward, I think he is an upgrade though, right? Because if you think about Josh Norman, he's better than Josh Norman, and arguably he's probably better than Emmanuel Mosley. Like in
Yeah.
terms of staying healthy and he might not be a super true lockdown cornerback, but I don't think there's many true lockdown cornerbacks in the league anymore, right? Based on how the rules are tailored now towards offense, it's kind of tough. But yeah, the Niners, I mean, have a second round pick, 61 overall. They have two third round picks, a fourth round, a fifth round, and three sixth round picks, and a seventh round pick, right? And I think the goal right now is to see if we can trade Jimmy G to get another second round pick or possibly third round picks to kind of add to it, right? So I think we'll be pretty active in this draft. I think this draft will be one to can't miss. For Niner fans. Just like last year. I think last year was definitely can't miss because we knew they were going to draft a quarterback. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Frank Gore signing a 1-day contract and looks like he's going to retire as a San Francisco 49er here. He also has indicated that he wants to go into the front office and that he loves scouting players and things like that there. What did you think of the signing?
Yeah, I mean, that's awesome that Gore is retiring as a Niner, right? I mean, what was interesting about Gore is that the fact that he got 12 seasons overall career. That's pretty impressive for a running back. So to me, that plus the 16,000 rushing yards makes him a Hall of Famer, right? But I think there can be debates though whether or not he is because he hasn't won a Super Bowl. So there's gonna be some pushback there. But I think, like being the third, I think he was like the third overall best running back in terms of like scoring and yardage and all that stuff of all time, right? Third of all time. That I think he deserves a nod. So we'll see what happens. He might not be first ballot. And in terms of the front office, yeah, maybe, like maybe he has a career there because he could probably assess a lot of the running backs. He knows what to look for. I'm also hearing that he's trying to continue to pursue his boxing career, even though he got knocked down in his first match. But I know he's been training really hard to try to get back in it. So I guess that's something also to look out for.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, I had a lot of good memories of him. Like before him was what Kevin Barlow, right? And he wasn't that great, And so we finally got Gore, who I think had some issues with his knee in college and had fumbling issues. So that's why he got picked, I think, pretty late in the draft. But then obviously the fumbling issues got fixed, and his
Mhm.
injury and durability was an issue, right? So it's kind of hard sometimes to tell who's going to be like this and who isn't. So good thing he turned out. Glad to have him as a Niner. And yeah, I mean that's the main thing. So we'll see.
Yeah, I just think like you can get lucky sometimes, right? It could easily go the other way around and Gore having like I don't know 2 seasons and his career fading out because of injuries. I think we just got the better end of the stick in terms of Gore's production and being in the right team and environment. I thought that was pretty helpful for him.
Yeah, and hopefully guys like Trey Sermon would not go that direction, right? Go the Frank Gore route. I think that's a guy that's going to be. We'll find out this season what he's really made of, right? As a second year running back, kind of second in the depth chart, unfortunately, because of Elijah Mitchell. But we drafted him pretty high, so I think there's a lot of expectations for him to do well. So we'll see.
All right, let's talk about the NBA. Last time we spoke, the Warriors were on a downswing in terms of their win-loss record since Curry's been out, but they won the last 2 games. here, most recently against the Kings in Sacramento, and they also beat the Jazz at home here. And I thought the Jazz game was pretty thrilling, to be honest with you, especially being down by, I believe,
Mhm.
what, 18 points or so
Yep.
in the second half, and they went on that run where they couldn't be stopped. Klay Thompson went off for a bit in the fourth quarter here, but I guess stemming from our last conversation, I know you were pretty down on the Warriors' chances, moving forward. But do these last two games has that altered your mind a little bit there? Or are you still pretty wary about how the Warriors will do to end the season?
I mean, I think I'm still a little wary. I'm glad they clinched at least, so we know for sure they'll be in the playoffs. But what I thought was crazy is how unbalanced the leagues are. In terms of the conferences. I saw Tim Kawakami on Twitter tweeted out that if the Warriors win all three games, and the Heat win all three games, that's the number one and number two seed in the East. So it goes to show how imbalanced that is. Where the Warriors are going to be holding on. I think even if they win out, the Grizzlies are probably going to keep their reign, and maybe the Mavericks can still take over. So we have to kind of see. I'm a little worried about the seeding wise. I think the third seed will play the sixth seed at this point,
Hmm.
so it's gonna be the Jazz. So obviously we won this game, which is a good indicator of hey, we'll probably do well. But if we do move on, and have to face like the Grizzlies or the Suns, and Curry's not there, then that's where it's going to be really pessimistic, right? And they did shut down Curry for the rest of the season now. Um, I mean, I guess we're not that surprised, right? Because they clinched the season berth, like a postseason berth. So what's the point of keeping him active at that point? But I'm feeling a little bit better. I think the last three games are winnable. Against the Lakers, Spurs, and Pelicans. I think those are winnable games, and we'll see how it goes. But yeah, hopefully we keep our number three seeding.
Kaminga has played around 4 to 5 minutes per game for the last couple games here in favor of guys like Vigilica, Damian Lee. Moody hasn't really hit the court too much. Do you think that has altered their development? Trying to play these veterans who probably won't be with the team next year.
Well, Kaminga played 31 minutes in the Kings game, right? So I think they're still developing him, and it's depending on matchups where they put Kaminga in.
Hmm.
But I do agree with you that maybe we should play him a little bit more, especially Moody. I think Moody so far has been somewhat of a disappointment, given that I think he was supposed to be drafted where Kaminga was, right? We thought he was going to be a higher pick. But then we also knew he wasn't NBA ready since day one, like Kaminga was, right? So we have to give it time. But to me, those guys are just going to be more depth pieces when it comes to the playoffs, right? You're not going to depend, I think, completely on these guys to take you far in the postseason. Whereas the veteran guys, I think you in the playoffs, you kind of depend on those guys a lot more. And the unfortunate part is those veteran guys haven't seen much playoff action, right? So we really don't know. So maybe it's kind of an even playing field with Kaminga and Moody, where they're inexperienced in postseason play, and we all know postseason is a completely different ballpark, right? The type of play and style is different. So we'll see. I believe in the coaching staff, though. I would say like Kerr knows what it takes to win, right? So gotta just trust the system. Is what I would say.
Yeah, I think in terms of the matchups they would want in the playoffs here, they would not want to face Dallas, the Grizzlies, and the Suns in that order here.
Hmm.
So if they could just play one of those teams once in the postseason, I think they'll be okay with it here. But I think the Warriors know they have to get through the Suns to get through the West. So
Yeah.
if that's going to be in the second round or going to be in the conference finals, they know it's the inevitable matchup here. So maybe the Warriors want to face the Suns early, just get it out of the way, beat them, and then after that, it'll be a little bit more of a smoother ride to the finals.
Well, the thing is, though, if you do play the Suns, you would be in that play-in tournament, right, with the eighth seed. So I don't think he'll face them in the first round, but I think I agree with you that maybe in the second round, if we make it past the Jazz or the T-Wolves, that maybe that's where that's where we can yeah, try to get them on early, right? And I think it's because of size, right? Is that why you say Grizzlies and the Mavericks aren't a good matchup for us? Is because of size and toughness, or I guess where? What was your assessment on thinking those guys weren't a
I
good
would
matchup?
say the Mavs, they play a really nice offensive game and they're really tough defensively. They're definitely
Mm,
like a top 3 or top 5 defense, and they give the Warriors a lot of matchup problems here. Um, Same goes with the Grizzlies too. I think they're just super athletic, and John Morant definitely is a problem for the
mm,
Warriors, and it's going to be really tough to guard him in a playoff setting here. And then with the Suns, I think they're the most balanced team in the NBA. They might be the best team overall going into the playoffs here. So I think those 3 teams alone, they give the Warriors a lot of fits there.
mm.
And I think the Warriors will do okay in a 7-game series, but it might go a little longer than we think it'll be.
Right. Okay. Yeah. No, I'm just glad they're in the playoffs at the end of the day and not in the play-in tournament. I think mathematically we probably won't be in there, so that's good. It was kind of a bummer last year, right? Like we just implemented this new system, and the Warriors were the first victims of it, really, because we were the eighth seed and we got eliminated.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, so we'll see this year.
Hey, you start off 18-2, you put yourself in a pretty decent position to make the playoffs. Although when we started 18-2, we thought
Yeah.
we would be a number 2 seed at the very worst, maybe even the number 1 seed, and it's
Mhm.
definitely been a tailspin since that hot start to start the season. But hey, you make the playoffs, get everyone healthy, get Steph Curry back for the first round. Anything can happen.
Yep. 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 Agreed. Agreed.
Major
All
League
right.
Baseball opening day in a couple days on April 7th. Are you pretty excited for this season here, Jerry? Because, the Giants, they won 107 games this past season, and there's a lot of expectations among fans that they can I don't think repeat is the right word, but get close to that win-loss record
Mhm.
here. But as we all know, winning 100 games is just tough by itself, right? Um,
Right.
and I think with the added playoff team, for each league, that kind of gives, I guess, some teams some leeway in terms of how many wins they can project here. My theory is,
Mhm.
okay, if they can get to 95 wins and make the playoffs, I think that's a pretty successful season. What do you think?
Yeah, like I think I was really pessimistic about the Giants in the off season, but and as the season comes closer, and I'm seeing them go on kind of a winning streak, and some guys are kind of surprising fans on their bats, right? Like some of the bats are really heating up in some of these
Hmm.
games. It's making me a little bit more optimistic, and getting more excited, and more things to watch out for. So yeah, so no, I'm feeling a lot better, feeling a lot more excited about it. And I think one of the guys I wanted to talk to you about is Joey Bart, right? And what
Hmm.
happens there? Do you think he's going to be our guy? We're seeing Thero Estrada come up big with his bat as well. And a few more guys like that. I think Dubon had a few good games where he batted out as well. So I guess, what do you think, man? Like, do you think this season it's becoming clear to me that we're not depending on a lot of free agents, so we didn't pick up too many, right? Like we got Jock Peterson, which I think is a strong bat, but I think we want to start developing some guys from the farm to become those guys that would do well long term, right? So. Do you think? I mean, do you feel optimistic? Because I'm feeling a lot better now after seeing the last few wins.
I think the computer and the stats or the computer generator does not like the Giants roster, or at least their their offensive lineup.
Yeah.
here. But on paper, the Giants have one of the top farm systems in Major League Baseball right now
Mm,
here. So in terms of replenishing and developing, that's not going to be an issue here. Right now, the thing we have to be worried about is the production on the field, right? And there's projections where Brandon Belt, Brandon Crawford, and those guys, even Darren Ruff, they're going to be below projections, especially compared to last season. And
mhm,
those guys are not getting any younger. They're in like, they're like in their early to mid 30s here. And we have to wonder if they're going to keep going on, with career years, especially a guy like Brandon Crawford, who plays a shortstop position. He plays every day, you know. Is he going to have a drop off there, especially in the middle of the lineup? So that's the thing that I would be worried about.
mhm,
In terms of Joey Bart, I think this is his team, to be honest with you. That's his position there. No one's really standing in his way. And from the reports that I've heard, he's really developing a good rapport. He looks a lot more confident in the dugout here. And he's showing a lot of promise. He's showing a lot of power in spring training. But what we really have to worry about with Joey Bart are those strikeout rates, right? And him making
mhm.
contact throughout the season. When you strike out a lot and when you don't hit the ball, you really get into those big slumps there. And combine that with trying to manage a pitching staff and trying to be in a catcher squat every day. That's kind of a tough thing to juggle for a young player. So I'm going to be on the watch out for that.
You know what's interesting about the Giants is I think every other team, the shortstop and the catcher position are really the weaker positions when it comes to offense, right? Like those are your typical like seventh or eighth batters, right? That you try to hide or ninth batter or whatever. But I think for the Giants, we've been very fortunate to have Buster Posey be really consistent, and even Benji Molina before Buster Posey to be really strong offensively on the catcher position. And then the shortstop position with Crawford lately, we've been really lucky to have him be an offensive force. But typically on the league, I think those two positions, based on what you said, having to work with the pitchers, especially with the catcher, and kind of the shortstop running, the defense in some ways, that it's tough to also be a good offensive player, because those are very strong defensive play positions and a lot to worry about. So we'll see with what adjustments we make on the catcher position, and maybe we need to reset our
Yeah.
expectations a little bit. I would say that maybe we don't need Joey Bart to be, or we shouldn't expect rather, right, that Joey Bart is going to be a replacement for Posey, because that's a very unique situation with Posey there. So I think that's one perspective that I would want to put out to the fans. So.
Yeah, I don't think the organization is expecting him to replace him in terms of his production and leadership here, but we do have to realize that Posey is not with the team anymore, right?
Mhm.
And that someone does have to step up, and the next guy in line is Joey Bart here. So he does have a lot to live up to, but I don't think anyone really expects him to replace Posey's numbers. But as collectively, I think the Giants will find some way to put up, I don't know, 20, 25 home runs, 80 RBIs that Posey put last season. So I think the organization is in good hands in terms of that.
Yeah, I'm wondering if there's going to be a drop off in some of the pitching as well, because I think
Mm,
a lot of why the starting pitchers and even the bullpen in some ways were pretty good the last few seasons is because Posey was behind the mound, right? And being able to fill out the players and kind of know their tendencies. And then you have a guy like Joey Bart who doesn't have that, right? I think maybe Kirk Casale, that's where he kind of has an edge up on Joey Bart is because he's a little bit more experienced. He's seen a lot of these major league hitters that he knows their tendencies a lot more than Bart will have to discover and learn. So I think we have to be on the lookout for that and see, what kind of matchups make sense to put Crisselli versus Bart. So.
yeah, it's going to be a fun season, and for the first time, we're going to have a home opener in 11 years. here. They usually always start on the road. I don't know why they always do that. You
Yeah.
know, why the schedule hates on the Giants that way there, but they start at home, and I think it's going to be a fairly good season, but I think we should temper expectations because what if we start off the season, I don't know, 10-18, for
Mhm.
example, right? Is it time to panic uh, there? If we start off 10-18, 11-20, you know, I think
Uh-huh.
I think fans would start panicking and start blaming the front office here. But
Right.
I think if we're competitive by midseason, this this front office will make a trade, and they've been willing to make trades
Mm.
there, taking on some salary. They did that with Chris Bryant last season. So I don't think we should be worried about keeping up with the Joneses and finding that next big hitter and signing them to a $200 million contract when we can kind of just put some pieces in the puzzle and just kind of plug away that way.
Right. No, that makes sense. I think this front office did show us that they were willing to spend when they need to, if it made sense, right? They've done that every single season that we've had a playoff run,
Yeah.
to augment some veterans to put them over the edge, basically, to be competitive. So excited. We'll see.
Hey,
Yeah.
just like Carlos Beltran in 2012, right? Signing him.
Different front office, man. Different front office. Like imagine Wheeler was still on our team, I think one part I've always talked about is I really wish we got Scherzer last season. One thing is could took him away from the Dodgers, and two would have solidified that starting lineup for the playoffs. So I thought that was a big miss. Maybe there's other factors involved that prevented Scherzer from coming, but imagine if he was here, right? I think maybe he would have been a lot better. He did get burnt out by us, right? I think the Dodgers did admit the Giants was one of the factors in why they didn't do so well in the next series. But who
Yeah,
knows?
I think the Giants didn't want to give up the prospects for Max Scherzer there, and also they weren't able to re-sign him because he was going to be a free agent as well. So it was kind of a double whammy, right? Oh, do we really want to give up all those prospects for basically a rental for a couple months there? And we don't know how his arm is going to hold up in the postseason. We basically saw what happened. He basically got dead arm against the Braves, and he really was not the same pitcher after that first round.
Yeah, no, I get it, but at this point though, if you're the hottest team in the league, right? Think about it that way, and we'll probably have a really high chance of winning the World Series. I think it's time to make those sacrifices, right? Like, what are you building towards? I guess with those prospects and with the additional, like money or cap space at that point, I think it was worth sacrificing that to make that push if we really felt serious about winning it all.
Mhm.
And that team obviously after this season's or after last season wasn't the same, like with Posey out and all that stuff. It's gonna be really hard to recreate that magic. So I think at the time I just felt like, some missed opportunity there, right? And obviously in hindsight, maybe it was a better move, but who knows, right? So
All right. Well, let's move on to our picks of the week.
all right, so there's nothing super set in stone because we're doing this on Tuesday. A lot of games are actually happening Thursday,
Mm,
so we'll just kind of pick, without lines and things like that. But let's go with first the home opener, right, for the San Francisco Giants at home versus the Miami Marlins. So let's just pick the series, right? So we're playing 3-game series there. You know, pick pick based on like wins and losses, right? Like, do you think it's gonna be 3-1 or 3-0, 2-2, or 1-2, or unfortunately, or 0-3, right? So how do you think we'll do? Not knowing any of the pitchers, right? We don't know what the starters are gonna be and all this stuff, but
yeah.
so what do you think?
Well, I think they're starting the series at home here, and they do have a couple injuries to Longoria and Wade, so that's going to put a hole throughout their lineup. But I think the Giants will be able to pull this out here and win the series 2 out of 3, led by a pretty strong Logan Webb performance on opening day here. So I believe they're going to win the first game, maybe lose a close one on that second game there, and then win that third game to win the series against the Marlins. What do you
Yeah,
think?
and actually, Don Mattingly, I'm seeing an article now that Don Mattingly did announce Sandy Alcantara, and as well as Josh Johnson and Josh Beckett as the starters for this game. So, or sorry, no, there is announcing Alcantara as a starter for opening day. My bad. So, does that change your pick at all with Sandy Alcantara as the opener with Logan Webb?
No, I don't think that really changes too much. Other that there, especially in opening day, you're usually facing the team's best starter to begin
Yeah,
with. So it
right.
might be a fairly close game, but at the same time, spring training was reduced, due
Mm,
to the lockout there. So um, I'm not sure if that really benefits the hitters or the pitchers. Probably the pitchers a little bit more. So we're
mm.
probably looking at a more close game in that regard here, but I'm going to pick the Giants on that day one game.
Yep. Okay, so I think I agree with you. 2-1 sounds about good. Maybe even 3-0. I just don't believe in this, Mattingly Marlins. I just don't think they're as talented. Plus, home openers are special, right? So we're gonna see a lot of stuff from Logan Webb. Not sure if Scalfanti is gonna be playing. Imagine maybe one of the games, and he's been looking lights out. Offense has been rocking. So I think this team is really momentum based, right? And I think they're losing to the A's right now, but before that, the bats have been hot. The bats have been really producing runs and scoring. So yeah, I think 2-3 sounds about right, and maybe even a 3-0. So go Giants there. All right, so next pick is the Lakers versus the Warriors. This is a Thursday game. The lines aren't out, but I did take the lines from the last game where the Lakers were out at the Warriors, right? The Warriors are at home. So Lakers are underdogs at plus 5.5, and the over under was 228.5.
Okay.
What do you have?
So the Lakers are underdogs in this game, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're underdogs here. You know what I'm looking at, the Lakers season is tail spinning downward
Uh-huh.
here. I don't think they're even going to make the play-in game. I don't think they're going to show up, to be honest with you. So I'm going to pick the Warriors just because I think they have more to play for, right? The more wins they compile, the higher seed they get there, and they definitely don't want to fall below 4
Mhm.
in the West. So I'm going to pick the Warriors in terms of the over under 228.5 here. Lately I've been picking the over and it's been going under. So I'm going to pick the under on this one just because what I mentioned, I don't think the Lakers will really show up to play. I think they're going to have a hard time scoring here. So I'm going to pick the under and I'm going with the Warriors, even though the Lakers 5.5 is pretty high for a spread. But I think the Warriors will win by about 6 or 7 points here. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the over under, since these aren't real lines, 28 is probably, pretty high. So I think I agree with you. It'll be the under. I wouldn't be surprised if the real line gets set at 218, like 10
Mm,
points less than that, because I think that sounds a little bit more accurate. The Warriors are getting a little bit more rest as well, right? They're not playing today. They're not playing tomorrow, Wednesday, and the game's on Thursday. Whereas the Lakers are actually playing the Suns tonight, and then they have to travel to the Warriors, for a game. So I think, yeah, I do agree with you. I think the Warriors will take it. I wouldn't be surprised if that 5.5 is the real line as well. That actually sounds pretty accurate, right? Around 5.5 or 6. But I think the Warriors can cover there. So, and like you said, the team just doesn't seem motivated, right? They just seem really like disjointed. Kind of
mhm.
reminds me of the Heat, right? The Heat and the Butler meltdown, where they lost to the Warriors, like second team, basically. I can imagine the Lakers having kind of a little bit of meltdown there, or at least having LeBron tantrum a little bit. So So yeah, go with the Warriors there. So what do you think though? Do you think the Lakers, what do you think they need to redo and reassess their team? Do you think LeBron pouting a little bit because he built this team had something to do with it, or what went wrong? A lot of people I think overanalyze this a little bit, but I'm curious to get your perspective on
I
it.
think the roster construction was wrong to begin with there, and they just put too much emphasis on their top four players,
Mhm,
and they knew right away that Russell Westbrook was not a right fit
uh-huh,
for this team, and they just need more younger scorers and guys who can score in the perimeter there. And Russ was just not that guy. He just didn't fit. He
mhm,
could probably play a little bit better for another team there who don't have like ball dominant players like LeBron.
mhm.
But yeah, they're just gonna have to retool. They're gonna have to find ways to get younger, and that might be through the draft, or that may be through free agency. But they have a lot of work to do in this offseason.
And it seems like AD was unmotivated to get healthy and come back, right? He was just kind of checked out too. I think that really hurt them. I guess Kent Bazemore kind of regrets not signing with us now, huh? Like should have made that choice a while back to come back. Imagine Kent Bazemore on this roster with the Warriors would have been.
Well, the good thing is that was probably the first time we talked about Ken Bazemore this whole season. And it's not like we're missing a guy like Ken Bazemore on our team, right? It's not like we're saying, okay, well, if Ken Bazemore was on this team, we're going to be the number 2 seed or the number 1 seed, right? I don't think he would make that big of an impact on this
That's
roster.
true.
So that's
That's
my two
true,
cents on
but
that.
I'm just laughing, because his celebrations are all epic now. I think he contributes more to the spirit of the team rather than actual gameplay. But
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure he's a great team player in the locker room. Pretty good role player too, in terms
Mhm.
of stepping it up in like that sixth or seventh man. But I don't think he's that much of an impact player to pay him big dollars, right? And if he wants to play in LA, play with LeBron, try to make the playoffs there, then I think kudos to him.
Right. Okay. Cool.
All right, so shout out here.
It's to our boy. What's up, G? Thanks for always commenting. I think he's been a great moderator slash supporter of the show. So thank you, What's up, G?
All right. Well, that wraps up this week's episode here. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks everyone for subscribing. And if you haven't subscribed, press that subscribe button on YouTube or whatever audio platform that you listen to here. That wraps it up for this week of the MJ Sportscast. Thanks again, and we'll see you next time. Take care.
Here.